Sadly, tragically, many members of Congress seem to be happy to be part of this starvation caucus, happy to cut funding for UNRWA and make it harder to get aid to Palestinians in the midst of this crisis.
So there's Bernie Sanders dubbing the Republicans in Congress and others the Starvation Caucus, and for good reason, because Speaker Mike Johnson is currently trying to get Congress to pass a budget to avert a government shutdown by Friday night. And he has hidden in the budget one particular goodie for the sadists out there and among our elected officials, which is defunding the main organization that helps feed and give Palestinians medicine, and that is UNRWA. Yeah, you heard it, it's in our budget. The deal on a massive appropriations bill reached between Congress and the White House will include a ban on all direct US funding for the main humanitarian agency operating in Gaza, the United Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees. Remember, this is in the middle of this ongoing assault. Others would say genocide in Gaza, 32,000 killed, 74,000 wounded, and millions facing imminent famine. And UNRWA's assistance is vital. Just if you don't know, they provide education, healthcare, social services in the West Bank, Jordan, Lebanon, and Syria for an estimated 6 million Palestinian refugees. And they say that a cutoff in aid would create a huge gap in the agency's funding. Now, some people out there are like, wait a minute, didn't we already pause funding? You would be right, and we're gonna get into that. The US actually usually provides $300 to $400 million a year in UNRWA funding. We're the largest funder of UNRWA. Donald Trump in 2018 cut all of that off. Joe Biden restored it in 2021, but again, in late January, Israel accused 12 UNRWA members of being involved in the Hamas attacks on October 7th, and the US immediately halted funding to UNRWA, and the UN fired 10 or 12 employees accused by Israel of that. US intelligence found that Israeli allegations were credible, but did not conduct an independent analysis, relying instead on evaluation of the intelligence provided by Israel. The current Biden administration paused has no end date pending the outcome of the UN review and reevaluation of all UNRWA employees. Now this congressional deal in the so-called minibus will put a statutory prohibition on funding, thus tying the hands of the administration. In other words, they could bring it back. In fact, many are arguing they need to refund UNRWA to prevent this imminent starvation. But this poison pill in the omnibus spending bill would mean that until 2025 and perhaps longer, the US cannot refund UNRWA. Before I kick it to you, Cenk, I do wanna talk about those classified documents a little bit, and actually some of the people who were privy to that so-called intelligence, specifically Senator Chris Van Hollen, Democratic senator from Maryland, who actually said that, nah, it's bogus. The intelligence that links UNRWA to Hamas is faulty at best, but truly just a lie. Here he was on Face the Nation.
You seem to be implying that the links to terror groups are unfounded.
Oh, there's no doubt that the claim that Prime Minister Netanyahu and others are making that somehow UNRWA is a proxy for Hamas are just flat out lies. That's a flat out lie. If you look at the person who's in charge of operations on the ground in Gaza for UNRWA, it's about a 20-year US Army veteran. You can be sure he is not in cahoots with Hamas. Netanyahu has wanted to get rid of UNRWA since at least 2017. That's been his goal, not just in Gaza, but also in the other places you talked about. And if you get rid of UNRWA in Gaza today, it is the primary distribution system for food and aid. So if you cut off funding for UNRWA in Gaza entirely, it means more people will starve, more people won't get the medical assistance they need, and so it would be a huge mistake to cut them off.
That is a senator just calling it like it is. Cenk, I want to get your reactions before we talk about the impact of all this.
Yeah, so first of all, credit to both those guys. Bernie Sanders, a total hero. And so for those of you who are splitting hairs, well, he hasn't called it a genocide yet. I don't care what he calls it. I care about his actions. And he's pointing out, what are we doing here? Are you crazy? We're gonna cut off funding to UNRWA while these people, 1.1 million people are on the brink of starvation. Actions like that, restoring funding that actually helps human beings, are 1,000 times more important than any word. And by the way, I disagree with him on, I think it is a genocide. I don't think it's even close. Srebrenica was about 20% of the casualties that's happened here, and that was clearly a genocide. But actions matter, and he called it the Starvation Caucus. That is really strong words, because tons of his Democratic colleagues are in that Starvation Caucus. And that's not the kind of language the Democrats ever use. So thank you for doing that, Bernie, as usual, a hero. And Chris Van Hollen has been a shocking hero in this fight, constantly pointing out what is true and fighting to save innocent lives. I have never seen anything like this from an establishment Democrat. So, and maybe I'll even take establishment out of that title. I'm stunned by Senator Van Hollen's honesty and his fight for justice here. And on his claims on UNRWA, it is indisputable. US intelligence said that Israel turned over no evidence, none, that UNRWA was related to Hamas. It is a flat out lie. Senator Van Hollen is right about that. And Freddie, that brings us back to the main point, which is, isn't this amazing? Because I want you to stop and think about it. I know we're all used to Washington always doing the exact opposite of what the American people want and what is fair, etc. But here's US intelligence confirming Israel was totally lying about UNRWA. And yet, the overwhelming majority of Republicans and Democrats are saying, who cares, let's cut their funding anyway, based on that thing that we know is a lie.
Yeah, and I think it's important to remember, and these are the splitting hairs, right? These are the splitting hairs around Republicans and Democrats when it comes to Israel, right? It's that Biden ostensibly would turn back on the funding at some point, but Donald Trump, even before anything like October 7th happened, was just like, nah, I'm just gonna do Bibi a favor and completely cut UNRWA funding. And as Senator Van Hollen mentioned, this has been a goal of Bibi Netanyahu and the right and largely the political establishment in Israel to get rid of UNRWA. Again, it's not just food, it is not just medicine, it is education, it is a future. And they don't like that. They don't like the idea that Palestinians even live with a shred of hope, that they even live with a full belly, that they even live with the idea that there is a future, that there is a tomorrow. Hey, why not just leave? Just go. And if we can't get you to go, well, we're going to use a pretext of October 7th to completely wipe you off the map, literally, and ethnic cleanse you. I mean, there's no other excuse. So I know you're saying he's been a hero, but isn't it just a wild that the bar is so low where you're like, we're celebrating Democrats who don't believe in mass starvation of a sitting population. And just to be specific, let's get into it. UNRWA reports that during the first 17 days of March, so just this month, just an average of 159 aid trucks per day were allowed to cross into Gaza. Again, allowed by Israel, which is well below operational capacity of the crossings under the 500 per day target. Again, per day target to not starve. By the way, Israeli drone strikes have occurred at or near aid convoys, to say nothing of things like the Flower Massacre. You know, every time initially when there were hospitals attacked, it was like a lot of headlines grabbed. When people were killed, when they tried to get aid, a lot of headlines. But then it sort of falls from the news when Israel repeatedly attacks hospitals or repeatedly attacks people trying to get aid that they mete out, by the way. And then for the people on the ground, I mean, we've seen the videos, we've seen the images. Y'all are on social media, you know how this works. The children who are dying, the children whose bones are exposed, the children who are crying out, who are born well below their birth rate, who don't have formula, who don't have milk. Those who have survived, who do survive, again, face acute malnutrition. 31% of children under the age of 2 now suffering in northern Gaza, according to UNICEF. The UN agency also reports that 81% of Gazan households lack clean water, and 9 out of 10 do not have enough food to survive. So this is on both parties for sure, and it is nice to hear some Democrats breaking with their leadership about this, because the White House has been a brick wall.
Yeah, I think your point is the best one, which is how stunningly low the bar is. So we are begging and pleading with Democratic senators to not let 1.1 million people starve on purpose based on a malicious lie from the people who are starving them to death. And when a couple of senators go, oh, you guys are right, we shouldn't let 1 million people starve, we're like, yes. Meanwhile, I mean, look, I think that the Democratic Party has gotten off super easy, both parties. I mean, we're gonna talk more about the Republican Party in a second. The Republican Party is in the middle of kissing Netanyahu's ass harder than any Democrat ever has. They have pledged complete loyalty to him, and that's not an exaggeration. You'll see it in the quotes. But meanwhile, the overwhelming majority of the Democratic Party is hiding. They're supporting things like this, and they're part of the Starvation Caucus. And last I checked, over 200 members of the Democratic Party in Congress are still not for a ceasefire.
Yeah. I mean, again, this is, hey, could you get aid to the people who are still dying under American-made bombs? No? Okay. Anyway, is this gonna pass? Johnson's gonna bring up the bill for a vote through a streamlined process that requires 2/3 of support for it to pass. According to Chip Roy, if this bill sits out for 2 weeks, it'll get pilloried like a piñata. So they, quote, want to jam it through over the next 48 hours. You all know what to do in terms of talking to your elected officials about this poison pill that will starve this population faster than they already are being starved. I mean, it's unconscionable, but truly the lives we can save every single day cannot be underestimated.
Yeah, one last thing on this. The reason Chip Roy says that is because AIPAC is one of the largest founders of Mike Johnson and many other Republicans and many other Democrats. So they're trying to sneak this in to help their donors. Hey, the donors would like to starve 1 million people, so they're gonna do that on behalf of their donors. The reason he says if it sits out there for a while, it's gonna be in trouble is because both Democratic and Republican voters don't actually want it. So the America First crowd among MAGA are starting to get real agitated at the Republicans who keep saying that they will serve Israel unconditionally. And so he knows, hey, if we don't hurry up and starve these people so that we can all get checks, the crooks that we all are, then we're gonna get caught by the American people. So let's hurry up and do this malicious, horrible, disgusting thing before we get caught by the population. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR, so those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.